the Adoptive Mom Podcast Monday follow up. Or you know what? It's not Monday. I think I did this last week too. I'm going crazy. It's Tuesday. But it's the follow up show nonetheless. And I have Richie and Margot, who are both. Oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. I'm trying to. There we go. Hi, guys, who are both on the Facebook Live to kind of talk about their episode. And I'm so excited. And it sounds like you guys have already gotten some good feedback, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I've already gotten an email today about it. So,
That's awesome. So take a second and just introduce yourself for those who have not listened.
go ahead, Margo.
Uh, yeah, ladies first.
Hey, I'm Margot Gaston. I work for DHS. Richie's my supervisor. Thank you, Alex, for having us back on your show tonight.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And we discussed this on the podcast, but Margot is definitely your favorite employee, right, Richie?
Oh, in case anyone else is listening, I can't say that. I'm Richie McFarland. I'm the adoption supervisor for Area 1, which covers Washington, Madison, Benton, and Carroll counties
Right, of Arkansas. Should
of
specify.
Arkansas.
Yes.
Yes.
But and we talked about that in the episode some. So obviously everything adoption through DHS is going to vary state to state, but there are some general guidelines that are going to be pretty similar, and we recognize that for sure. But in the episode we talked about some process stuff, but we also talked about you guys's stories and why you're passionate for this job. And if you guys could just go ahead and nutshell that for us. So what brought you to this position and what makes you love it and stick around?
I was brought to DHS because I interned with them, DHS and the Division of Children and Family Services, because I interned with them when I was getting my degree in social work. And I stay because I found that it's a huge passion of mine and a love of mine. And I have had, my mom is a foster parent now, and so I've had some siblings that I have just absolutely fallen in love with. And so they've kind of helped me see the other side of the foster care system. And I want to be able to help people like them.
Yeah. What about you, Richie?
So I actually didn't even know what social work was originally. And so it kind of just had this weird, I did psychology, I was in grad school to do counseling, and just kind of took this road that led me to working with troubled youth in Springdale schools. And then I just thought about, going to DHS and working with foster kids. And after working with with the foster care unit in Washington County, I ended up becoming the adoption specialist for Benton and Carroll counties. And then about a little over a year ago, I became the supervisor.
Yeah. And I think it's worth noting that neither one of you have kids of your own, right?
Correct.
Correct.
And you still have this passion for these kids from hard places. And I just think that is so awesome. That it doesn't necessarily stem from just a general love of kids, but it's seeing a need and meeting that need, being the hands and feet, and actually going into that fire, so to speak. And I know that you guys, we talked about this in the episode, but I know that you guys see some really hard stuff and you keep doing it. Why do you think that is?
I think we keep doing it because now that we've seen the need, you can't look away. Once you have, it's going to sound so corny, but once you've, been there for a kid who's crying because they don't have a home, or, you've hugged a kid who's looks you in the eye, a 9-year-old boy who looks you in the eye and asks you why you haven't found a mom and dad for him yet, and stuff like that. You can't pretend like that doesn't happen anymore. And so, we've stuck with it because we've just developed this passion for it, and we love it, and we love those kids.
Yeah. Would you agree, Richie?
I do. For me, in doing this longer and longer, one of the things that really kind of sticks out to me is our foster teens, and just I've seen kids that age out of the system, and it's heartbreaking because the statistics with that for them is not good, and all they want is to have a family. We kind of had a situation this last week with a kid that had been in foster care for 10 years.
Yeah.
and just an amazing kid. To be honest with you, I don't know how he's not from this area originally, so I don't know why it took 10 years for him to find his adoptive family.
Mm-hmm.
But he did, and man, it's just a great story to tell and to hear about him finding his forever family, and that was his lifelong dream. I mean, he wanted to play on a basketball team and wanted to play on a football team and stuff. But if you were to ask him 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, what his dream is, his number one dream, it would be to have a family.
Mm-hmm.
And at 16, he had that. And I think that is awesome. And I wish we could find families for all of our teens, because the reality is that once they turn 18 and they're out of the foster care system, man, who are they going to go to? Who are they going to go to for advice in college? Who are they going to go to when, they have to make their first, big time car purchase or home purchase, or who's going to be there for them when they graduate college or get married or have their first child? Like, all those big milestones, these
Yeah.
kids don't get that. And
They're just
and
Christmas.
so that, yeah, and that just really right now, like, that just tugs at my heart,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to see these kids have just that family connection, that's a family that says, look, I'm connected to you for the rest of your life, and whatever that means, I'm there for you. And when you are down and out, you call me, you come home, whatever it may be. Or in the times that you're the happiest, like like I said, your first child or whatever, right? You've got that person there, and they deserve that.
Yeah. And this speaks to my heart because we adopted a teen. And for those of you, if you're in Arkansas, chances are you've heard this story. It's been on the news. It's been all over Facebook. If you're not from Arkansas, you probably haven't, but I'm going to link to that in the comments. Just the amazing story of this kid that Richie's talking about. And I mean, I don't think you mentioned the ending to that story, right? Did I miss that?
No, I didn't. No.
But yeah, it's just a really sweet story. So I'll link to that in the podcast, in the comments below. Sorry, I couldn't find that word for some reason. But I wanted to take a quick minute before we move on to, now that I'm talking about the comments. If you have questions for Richie or Margot about anything to do with adoption through DHS, just drop that in the comments and we will answer them as we go. But I'm sorry, really quick, Margot, were you going to say something? I just realized.
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you started to say something. But so can you guys take a second and talk about what you do versus just a general foster care system? So what makes the adoption specialist unit different?
Richard.
Oh, I think we lost Margot. So go ahead.
Okay. So like in general, like just adoptions and what we do versus like the foster care unit or something like that. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, just how does it, because I think that when people think foster care, they think just exactly what that says, foster care. So what makes the adoption side of things differently? Because a lot of people don't realize that you can open as an adopt-only home.
Right.
And just adopt. So and it can also be that you've had a foster kid in your system, and once their parental rights are terminated, then they move into the adoption side of things, which is still
Right.
you guys. So how is that different?
Right. So you kind of are going off in a couple different roads there, but
Sorry.
no. It's great because I mean, adoptions is kind of a bunch of different ways that you can go with that, and so we in adoptions, what we try to do is our main focus is permanency and trying to find what permanency is for them. So permanency is not reunification with the family, which again I am all for. I think reunification, we need to do a better job of it. We need to do reunification more than what we're doing right now. I think that is huge. And so I'm all about reunification, but there are those times where it's not in the best interest of the child.
Mm-hmm.
And in those situations, now our focus is adoption, because that is in the state of Arkansas, that is the most permanent form of permanency. And so what we are trying to do at that point is determine, is the foster parent the best fit for that child? And in most cases, they probably are if they want to adopt a child. But there are times where they're not. I mean, we've got a case right now. We just feel like these kids need to be in a different home. And so, we are trying to recruit another adoptive home for these children. And so, which kind of leads me into my next point is if you don't feel like, if you feel like your best attribute is to be the permanent home for a child and not be that bridge family, which is what foster care is,
Mm-hmm.
then absolutely you can open up as what we call adopt only. And that is just where you're not going to foster, you are there to give permanency to a child or to a sibling group.
Yes, and I want to specify that's how we adopted both of our boys. And so, if you are wanting to adopt, obviously I am all for adoption through foster care. I think that there's such a need with these kids, and I think that the word foster care scares some people off because there's such a need for foster care. And I have so much
Mm-hmm.
respect for foster parents who stand in the gap for these kids day in and day out, and they choose to have their hearts broken. And if that's not you, if you just want, like what Richie said, you just want to provide permanency, then I fully advocate just opening as an adopt only home and creating permanency for these kids. And I think that um, another misconception is that this happens immediately. And I know that there's sometimes a wait, which is why, we were talking before we went live here, Richie, that somebody emailed you just wanting to say, hey, we've been open, we haven't been matched yet. So that matching process can take some time, but it's completely worth the wait. And it's very similar to the wait time of an international or a domestic adoption, right?
Yes, it can be.
Right.
Um, I know that like my wife's uncle, it took them over 4 years to be able to adopt a kid from Haiti. And so, and we've got families that are adopt only that depending on what their age requirement is or, whatever they want, um, it can take, several years before that match actually transpires.
Right. And I should specify, I meant the wait time, but including the wait time for, your CPR certification and your background check and your home study and all of that stuff included in that. I think that people are like, oh, that could take, 4 months. That's not worth the
Mm-hmm.
wait or something, but it totally is.
Mm-hmm.
What, and I know that you guys have very specific reasons why that process is worth it, right?
Yeah. So one thing that I had talked about on the podcast was just kind of trying to help people who are maybe pushed back by the fact that the licensing process does take a while. And something that I want people who maybe don't like the idea of having to wait several months and turn in so much paperwork and, all that red tape that, people call it. And I know that that's frustrating to do because, you know that you're a good person and you're capable of providing a safe and loving home to these children. But you wouldn't automatically just go let your own children go live with a stranger. And so we want to extend that same respect to our families and to our children as well. So the way I kind of think it's good to look at it is that, all adoptive homes and foster homes have to go through the same licensing process. So take comfort in knowing that while you're going through that whole licensing process, that's so much work. The home that your child is currently in, the foster home that they're in before they come to your adoptive home while you're doing the licensing process, that home has gone through all of that stuff as well. So take comfort knowing that we make sure that the home that your child is in before they come to you, that we checked out that home thoroughly, that's a safe home. So we want to keep your child safe before they come to you.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that reassurance that often it's so hard to think out of our own worlds. And when we're dealing with a system where we don't have a ton of control as parents, until those papers are signed and we're, standing before a judge saying, yes, we want to adopt this kid. And I think that can be really frustrating for some people, especially because of that 6-month waiting period, or I'm sorry, trial period, where you still don't have control. But
the process too before you have the child placed in your home. Richie can probably elaborate on this better if you want him to, but I think that some people are shocked to find out that we do pre-placement visits, that you have to meet the child and have visitation with the child before they're placed in your home. And, we want to make sure that we don't just want to automatically have you meet this child and say, hey, this is the family that's going to adopt you, and then put you in their home and do the adoption the next day. We want to make sure that this process is a slow and thorough process for both the family and the child to make sure that everybody's going to be able to have their needs met.
Absolutely. And you guys are in the business of minimizing trauma for these kids. And when you put a kid in a situation and have a parent change their mind, that could be so devastating. That would be so devastating. And you guys, that happens, and you guys pick up the pieces every day. And talking about foster parents allowing their hearts to be broken over and over again, you guys are right there with them. And that's just so amazing. I feel like there's so much we could talk about, and there's a ton of stuff that we talked about in the episode. So if you haven't listened, I would encourage you to do that. And I think one of the biggest reasons that I wanted to have you guys on the show is because you're both awesome, but also, and we talked about this, I know that you guys are not naive to the fact that your department doesn't always have the best reputation in any part of the country. It's not your department specifically, but I know so many people that are in your corner that see the insane, ridiculous caseloads that you guys have and see how hard you're working. And I just would never want you guys to not get, to tell your stories too, to just be, kicked while you're down, so to speak, because you're like, okay, I'll just be over here doing my work still again,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And both Richie and I, after we got done recording that podcast with you, talked about how much we appreciated that you gave us that platform to tell our side of stuff. So thank you for that. And thank you, everybody, for listening to that.
You guys deserve that. I think that, like I said, you guys deserve the best. You guys work so hard for these kids, and I think that you definitely represent the majority of DHS workers. And we talked about that in the episode, to not let those one-off stories become your idea of everyone in this incredibly hardworking system. So I appreciate everything you guys do. And if you're watching this on the replay and you have questions, we will all be monitoring the feed, and we can answer those questions as they come in. And if you haven't listened to the episode, once again, you're definitely missing out. So check it out and let us know what you think. And do you guys have anything else you want to share before we sign off here?
No, thanks for having us on again. Thank you again, everybody, for listening.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
For sure. Well, have a good night, you guys.
Bye, Alex.